So this is Lost Battles, 40 Battles and Campaigns of the Ancient World by Professor Philip Sabin. Graphics by Mark Mahaffey there. And this is by Fifth Column Games, I want to say. Fifth Column Games, who I think did Where There Is Discord. This came out, God knows when, 10 years ago, 2010, 2012 maybe. It was something of a Grail game for me actually. I don't really have many Grail games, but this was really quite difficult to track down and quite pricey when I did track it down, but I'm really glad I did. Before lockdown, all that time ago, before such a thing as lockdown even existed anywhere around the world, before we even knew we were going to get locked down, I was playing some Great Battles of History, and in fact I was playing Gaugamela in using the Great Battles of History system from the Great Battles of Alexander. And I think at some point during that I said I was going to refight Gaugamela, or planning to, in a different system, and this is the one I had in mind. And instead of doing that, I then went into 1880. Unfortunately, I was enjoying 1880, but after 15 weeks living in a different house because of lockdown, I came back to it and just looked at it and went, I have absolutely no idea what's happening here. I don't know what any of the players are doing. I don't understand the board state. I really don't remember much about how to play the game, and I tried to play a turn and it was just instantly apparent that I had no idea what I was doing, and picking up a game halfway through where players have got really involved positions like that just wasn't viable. I was just going to make terrible mistakes with everyone, and it was just all going to turn into something of a farce. So yeah, I packed that away, lovely though it was, and got this out. Now I had been planning to play Gaugamela, as I said, but I didn't want to mess it up. Frankly, I didn't want to play it and then go, oh, I've got all the rules wrong and I don't know what I'm doing and blah blah blah. So I thought, you know what, I'll start with, like a lot of people seem to, or people who own this, I'll start with the first battle in in the scenario book, which is actually Marathon from 490 BC, an Athenian army composed entirely of average hoplite infantry up against a Persian army of primarily levy archers with a few average archers and a couple of cavalry units thrown in. I've played this through twice now, this scenario. I don't think I've got the rules perfectly correct either time, and this is a game that punishes rules errors. You get +1s or -1s wrong at the wrong time, and your entire army can collapse due to a misreading of the rules. And it seems really lovely. I'm a super intrigued by the system. I think it's beautiful, but you do need to get it right. You do need to play it correctly. I don't think it's as forgiving as things like OCS and Great Battles of History. You can probably get a modifier wrong or a bit of play wrong and say, okay, well we'll just live with that. There are so few units on the board, as you can see here at Marathon. There's 8 there, 4 in the centre, another 8 there. The entire Athenian line is 20 counters, with a leader thrown in there as well, and pretty much the same over this side on the Persians. You can't afford to be getting it wrong, you know. And when you're rolling for army collapse, and it's a question of, if you've got 0, you're fine, but if you've got -1, you're routing. That -1 modifier misapplied or incorrectly applied, or a +1 incorrectly applied, is a huge deal. So I have gone through this a couple of times getting things wrong, and now I'm going to try and play it correctly. So you can see straight away the board is this is a modular board of tiles, 4x5. Every battle is a 4x5 grid of tiles, and you know, each side has its side of the board, a bit like chess. So you know, they've got the Athenians have got these 10 tiles here, and the Persians have got these 10 tiles here. and they've each actually got a name. So this is centre, centre right, centre left, centre left, centre right, and so on for each side's positions. And clearly a very different scale of game to Great Battles of History, which would obviously be using a hex map about this size with 1-inch hexits, and probably for a battle like Marathon. I don't have Marathon in the Great Battles of History series, but I'm guessing that if you set it up in Great Battles of History, it would have probably 3 to 4 times the number of counters per side rather than 20. You may easily have 60 on a side, I'm guessing, possibly more. And this army's got 1 leader. You'd probably have 5 because of how intrinsic they are to the orders system there and activations there. Leaders have leaders aren't required for activations in this system. You're still using an orders system. Each side will get a number of commands each turn with which to activate its army, and what leaders give you is exemptions and bonuses and discounts on issuing orders in their zones. So they use leaders in a very different way, but I'm guessing an army in Great Battles of History of this sort of size would have 4 or 5 leaders, probably 3, 4, 5. So we're looking at something about the size, obviously a sort of grand tactical look at the battle, rather than the very tactical, zoomed-in view of Great Battles of History. Other than that, it still seems to have a lot of the same concepts, which isn't a surprise because I've seen discussions between Philip Sabin and Mark Herman online, and they're very respectful of each other's work, and they've read all the same books, and they've used all the same source material, and they've come to very different designs. But this is a design where collapse is a function of an army morale roll that you make, and then you check individual units against that army morale, whereas Great Battles of History achieves the same kind of thing, but in a kind of escalating fashion where units are routing quicker than you've got the leadership to rally them, or you can just stop fighting to rally them, and then you just lose more units. So it has a sort of vicious cycle kind of collapse. What else? Obviously it has a command system, very similar again to Great Battles of History, although implemented again at a grand tactical scale across the whole army rather than at the tactical individual leader level of Great Battles of History. And because it doesn't have all that kind of stuff around factors, cohesion hits and factors and movement points and blah blah blah, so the counters are very Spartan as well. You just got a average infantry, average hoplite infantry, and that's all you need to know. The key thing about the counters is their width. Each battle has an attack value, and that is how many units can attack out of an individual zone. And in this battle it's 5, so for example these 5 units could all attack out of there, but there's 8 in there. 3 of them couldn't attack across this side of this zone, but you can see that these cavalry are twice the width, so they would count as 2 of your attacks. So if you put that cavalry there just for a second, you can see they're twice the width of those infantry, and they would therefore count as 2 attacks, and then you could attack with 3. So they're half as effectively, because you're getting 1 roll to hit for these cavalry, whereas you're getting 2 rolls to hit for these infantry. Another thing that's very similar to Great Battles of History is, but again, adapted for a grand tactical rather than tactical system, is this sort of matrix of weapon types and therefore to hit numbers. Now in Great Battles of History, you cross-index your sort of a weapon type against your defence type, so phalanx against light cavalry, and you end up with a column, a sort of attack column, and you then go to another chart and you roll a d10 on that attack column, and it tells you how many hits the attacker and defender take. Here you just cross-reference your troop type with your opponent's defending troop type, and it gives you a to hit number on 2d6 from between 7 and 10. I think 7's the lowest, I think 10's the highest. And then there are a bunch of modifiers up here which can give you +1s and -1s, and you roll 2d6, and if you get if you beat that number, you score a hit, and if you beat it by lots, you can score 2 hits. And if you don't beat it at all, you don't suffer any ill effects at all. The attacker in combat does not suffer ill effects. It's always the defender. There is an exception to that. If you can choose to take make all out attacks, which can turn almost hits into hits at the cost of taking a hit yourself, or almost 2 hits into 2 hits at the cost of taking a hit yourself. But actually there's quite a lot of similarities, and therefore in how this system and Great Battles of History are looking at weapon systems attacking and defending against each other using this kind of matrix of to hit numbers. So that's all really intriguing. Like I say, I've played this twice, this battle. I'm not claiming I got it fully correct either time, and I've had 2 pretty resounding Athenian victories, which I don't think is I think is pretty par for the course actually in this battle, in this system. But now I'm going to give it a third go on camera, trying to get the rules right, and then I'm going to move on to some other battles from this system. Whether I get to Gaugamela is another matter, but I fancy exploring the system for at least a few battles, and by the time I get to Gaugamela I want to be completely confident that I'm getting the rules right so that I can do a proper comparison with the Great Battles of History version.